Hi everyone, I'm Bia and welcome back to Kardec Radio for Teens. So as you know, we've been starting a new thing on Kardec Radio for Teens, doing videos instead of just the audio recording. And we're starting to go through the Gospel according to Spiritism together. And we're right in the introduction. And as we talked about last time, the introduction is so important because oftentimes when we read a book, we want to jump over the introduction and we want to skip over it and just start the actual message, the actual book, the actual story, right? We don't really care about the introduction, but the introduction brings us a lot of very useful information. So it's really important that we read this introduction because it sets the basis for what's coming in the book. It sets the basis for what we need to know so we can better understand the teachings in this book. So last week we read and we discussed number 1 of the introduction, right? Section 1 of the introduction. And this week we're going to start off with section 2. So this section is titled The Authority Behind the Spiritist Doctrine. So it's going to tell us a little more of the background of the behind the Spiritist doctrine, right? How do we have the Spiritist doctrine? Who invented this? Who made this, right? And clarify that so when we're reading the book, we understand where these lessons and messages are coming from. So what it starts off saying is that if the Spiritist doctrine came from one person, right? Only one person, then it would be maybe not believable because it's just one person saying this, and it wouldn't spread as far because maybe that one person is of a certain group or a certain religion or a certain race, and they won't want to accept those new ideas. So it's not going to be as widespread if it's just one person, and we also don't know, maybe that person's going to interpret Spiritism differently, right? Interpret the message from the spirits differently, or put their own opinion into it. So it's kind of saying, if the Spiritist doctrine was just created by one person, it was just one person saying all this stuff, it would be kind of hard to spread it out, hard to understand. Maybe we would have mixed ideas. So they're saying, God wished, right, for these messages to get out quick, like they're saying quick and the most authentic path. So how are we going to spread out to a lot of people? Because think about one person trying to spread a whole doctrine to the whole world, right? It's going to take a long time. And hopefully, if that person doesn't have their own opinions thrown in there, right? And we don't deviate from what the actual message that we're trying to get across. So that's why we see, as they're going to talk about more, how the spirits and God, right, decided to spread these messages all over the world, right? From in every country and every types of races and all different types of groups, so that all of these little things starting in a lot of places, those will start growing and spreading, and then it'll spread throughout the world much, much faster than just one person, right, trying to get all that message across. If it's sprouting all over the world, it's going to go a lot faster. So that's what they're saying. It would be silly to have just one person, right? So now they're already addressing how, of course, this is much more widespread. So then the spirits go and continue to talk about what problems might be created by having just one person spreading the Spiritist doctrine. So another thing they said is that one person might be deceived, right? So it's easy for that one person to get good messages, right, from the good spirits, but also some not so great messages, or it's just tricking the person, confusing that person from frivolous spirits that are less evolved, right, that are just trying to mess with that person. So that person might be deceived more easily because there's just one person to compare to, right? You can't compare with others if everyone's getting the same information. And another issue that they bring up here that would happen if we only had one person trying to spread all of Spiritism, then if with like trying to spread new ideas, right? New ideas happen, there's always those who are against it, right? There's also always those who want to get rid of those new ideas. So that people might be coming after that person, trying to put them in jail, trying to get rid of them, trying to get them to stop spreading this because they don't agree, right? So there's always these types of people, or people, right? Times when people burn books that say certain things. So if there was just this one person, it would be easy to track them down, to get them to stop, to burn all their books. But this message is coming from the spirits, so we can't burn down the spirits, right? So we can't burn them down. We can't burn down their message. We can't put away their message. And it'll keep popping up all over the world. So it's harder to resist that, right? To go against that and to try and get rid of that. Because even if all the Spiritist books burned, those messages are still there with the spirits, right? And they can still tell us all over again. So that's why it can't just be one person that's spreading the Spiritist doctrine. There's a lot more to it, right? To ensure that we spread this message and that we can fight these aggressions, right, towards Spiritism that come with not only Spiritism but all types of beliefs, right? When a new belief comes into the world, a new thought, right, a new way of thinking, there's always those who go against it. So having it widespread and having Spiritism not of the material world, right? We can't get rid of it. How are we gonna burn all the books if it's within the spirits, right? And they can tell us all that information again. And another good point that they're bringing up about the good thing about having it all over is that the spirits can reach places that maybe someone like us or this one person wouldn't be able to reach, right? Maybe they wouldn't be able to reach across the world, or to a different age group or to a different race than them. But the spirits can, right? The spirits can reach all these different people that we might not have reached on our own. And they're saying it's a blessing that we had these spirits that are spreading it all over the world, because think about it, if we just had that one person spreading Spiritism, then Spiritism would be barely known because it wouldn't have reached that many people. And then what happens when that person passes away? Is there someone to take over their spot, or is that it? So that would be difficult, but thankfully we don't have just one person, right? And there's many, many, many people spreading these, and many, many spirits spreading this information. And right, and thankfully that helps Spiritism be more wide known. Otherwise, it would be barely known by people. Another important thought that they bring up here is that Spiritism has no nationality and does not stem from any known cult that might exist. And this is really important because sometimes people are judgmental and people don't like things just because that one group that they don't like did something. So maybe someone doesn't like that, oh, females created this, so I don't want to believe in it. Or maybe this race created this idea or had this idea, so I don't want to be associated with it, or this political party, or whatever it may be. So there's no nationality, and it doesn't stem from any group that already exists, because we don't want to have those judgments coming off of just different things that are unrelated to Spiritism at all, right? Saying, oh, well, a girl created this, so I don't want to believe in it, right? So they don't want any of that. So it's not coming from a specific group already. It's coming just all over the world with no nationality, no groups associated to it. And then they add, this is how it had to be accomplished if it were to lead all mankind towards brotherhood. So if we want Spiritism and the Spiritist doctrine, right, to go towards all mankind, to spread this brotherhood to everyone, this is how it had to be, right? It had to be widespread. It had to not have already a group that it's associated with, so we can spread it out and not have that bias that might be created otherwise. So then it continues for the next 2 paragraphs, saying more about this, right? How it's important that we have multiple people and not just one person. And now, right, we have millions of voices making themselves heard simultaneously in every corner of this planet. So there's a lot of people working together, right? A lot of spirits working together all over the world to come together with these messages. And then they bring up another important thing, is not only can the person have their own opinions, their own biases, but sometimes the spirits as well, right? Because they bring up a good point that spirits, just because they're spirits, does not mean that they possess all the truth, does not mean they have all the right answers, right? So the good spirits that are much more evolved than us, they're going to come with these good messages and these right things for us to follow. But there are spirits who are just ordinary spirits, right? Who are at the same level as we are, and who know the same amount as we do. And maybe they think they know a lot, right? And they think they know everything because maybe they were really smart. Maybe they were a doctor and a professor and all these things when they were on the corporeal world and they were living on earth, but they have that false sense of intelligence, and they're really not as wise as we think they are, or they might think they are. And also among those, there are also frivolous spirits who might just be trying to trick you, right? They might come and say, oh yes, I'm this great person that you should listen to everything I say, but then when you listen to what they're saying, it's things that aren't adding up, right? It's things that are not going against common sense of what is right and what is wrong. So there's also, we can't, just because it's coming from the spirits doesn't mean we can listen and accept everything that all spirits say, which is why it's important that we have multiple people, multiple mediums receiving these messages from the spirits all over the world, because maybe if someone is being influenced by a frivolous spirit who's saying wrong information, when they check it with someone else, they can say, oh, okay, yeah, this spirit wasn't really saying the right thing. And then they can disregard that because they have things to compare it to. If it was just one person, how would they know what is true and what's not based on what the spirit's saying? So we need to make sure, right, when we're getting information, that we're not only just, okay, I got this message from a spirit, but seeing, okay, does this make sense, right? Is this a good spirit? Do we trust these words that are being said? And they go on to say that the first test we have to undertake when we're reading these messages by spirits is with your reason. If it's contradicting good sense, or if it's against things that we already have in place that we know are good, or that or positive facts, right, or logic. If it's going against basic things that we already know, right? If they say, oh yeah, you can hurt someone if they hurt you, we already know, right, that we shouldn't be hurting each other, even if they did something to us. That's not what we're supposed to be doing, right? We're supposed to be forgiving. So that would raise a red flag and be like, I don't really know if that's right. And then we can check that with other people and other information, other spirits, right? So the first is just with our reason, right? We don't just have to blindly accept everything that's being said. And that's why we want to go through even this book, right? Which we already know is by good, really highly evolved spirits, but we're not just reading this book because we're forced to read it and we're just going to accept everything in it. If we're confused, if we have questions, we need to stop. We need to ask those questions. We need to think about them. We need to reason them, right? Because we need to check it. Because what if we're getting this information from someone we've never met before, and we don't know how viable they are, right? We don't know how truthful they are. So we need to use our reason and see, okay, is this right or wrong, right? What do I already know is right and wrong? And is this going against it, or does this make sense, right? And going off like that and seeing if other spirits and other places and other people are having the same ideas. Because if you're the only one with that idea in the whole world, then maybe there's something a little bit off about that. And going off of that point, they bring up that even if you have no faith in yourself, like, I don't know what's right or wrong, I can't decide if this is good or bad. Well, then again, look at the majority, right? Are the majority of people also getting the same message, also getting the same thing? If you're the only one, then chances are it's probably not right, because the Spiritist doctrine wants to be spread everywhere, right, for a lot of people. So if you're the only one getting that message, it's probably not completely correct, and it's probably not the good spirits that are trying to spread the Spiritist doctrine. And another thing that's important with this is when we're checking with others our results, if it's one person and you get some like kind of fake information, so you yourself ask another spirit, they could say that they are a different spirit, but it's the same spirit. So even if one person is saying that they communicated with many spirits, it could be the same spirit under different names. So we want to make sure that when we're comparing with other thoughts and other ideas, that we're getting them from a wide range, right? That we're getting them from all over. Not the same person, not the same spirit center, because they might all be influenced, right? Under that same frivolous spirit who's just joking around. So we want to make sure that we're getting widespread information so that we can see how accurate and how same are the things that we're receiving. And they say that here, that concordance of spirit teachings is the best proof of authenticity. So, right, that agreement between what is being said by spirits here and there, and in that country and in this country and all over, right, with all different types of people. Because the weakest type of agreement that they're saying is with the same person or with the same group of people, because you might all be under that same influence. So, right, we want to spread out to different countries, to different places, and see, okay, are you getting these same informations? And if not, we need to take a closer look at that information. And here they say, italicized, so very important, they say, only one sure guarantee exists for Spiritist teachings. This is the concordance that exists between revelations which have been received spontaneously by a large number of mediums, not known to each other, and located in different places. So this is the guarantee, right? If that same message is widespread with a lot of different mediums all over that don't know each other, right, aren't related to each other at all, and just randomly, but then when everyone comes together, they say, oh yeah, I got that same idea. Then we say, okay, yeah, that is a true Spiritist teaching, right? That is a true message that we are taking. So that is a big thing that they point out. And we're going to end off there in section 2, and we'll continue section 2 next week. But I also want to point out how this applies to not only Spiritism, but how it can apply to our daily lives, right? We have lots of friends, lots of adults in our lives that don't know everything, right? As we know, us on Earth, we are not super evolved. So we make mistakes, and maybe we think we know something, but we got it a little wrong. So we need to use that reasoning in our day-to-day lives, right? If our friend tells us something, we need to reason that. Oh, in our head, is that good or bad? Is that, what do I think about that before we just go and agree with people? Or, right, maybe your whole group of friends is saying that one thing. But again, that's all in one spot. Maybe all those people are being influenced by the same thing. But what are people in other schools thinking about? What are people in other countries thinking about that? Or even adults, right? Just because adults are older than us, in this corporeal body, right, doesn't mean that their spirit is more evolved than ours. And of course, right, we need to respect those adults that are telling us things, but we can also use our reason and say, okay, do I agree with this, right? Does this seem right or incorrect? Maybe they made a mistake, right? We all make mistakes. So we should use this in our daily lives all the time, right, to fact check what is being said, right? We know lately, right, there's a lot of fake news. So we need to fact check ourselves. We need to think and reason through things before we just accept them blindly, before we just read them and say, oh, here, right? So we need to take that into account and make sure that we're reasoning with the things that we're accepting, especially if then we're going to go and spread that to someone else, because now we're spreading wrong information to someone else. So we want to make sure, even if people are spreading wrong information to us, that's fine, but we need to try and process through it and work through it and see what truly is right and wrong, or what truly is fact, or what's not a fact, right? So throughout this week, I encourage all of you to try and use that in your day-to-day lives, right? When people are telling you information, are you just going to accept that? One thing that's been going around has been photoshopped photos, right, of maybe like a little animal or something that isn't real, and people just post it and say, oh, look how cute this is, but it was photoshopped, right? It's not real. There's no real animal that looks like that. So little things like that, right? How are we interpreting the information that's sent to us? Are we just agreeing with it? Are we even considering it, right? What's right and wrong, what's true and what's not true, right? So use that in your day-to-day lives and try and make sure that you're getting that real information and not fake news, right? So next week we'll continue and we'll talk more about that section 2 of the introduction of the Gospel according to Spiritism. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, anything at all, feel free to email me at kardecradioforteens@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you right away. I'm Bia, and this has been Kardec Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening.